So today we're talking about Freud's most important idea about the human psyche or personality, which has more than one aspect. Now, Freud saw the psyche structured into three parts: the id, the ego, and the superego, all developing at different stages in our lives. Now, it's important to remember that these are systems, not parts of the brain or any way physical. So when you're thinking of the id, think of a child. The personality of a newborn child is all id, and only later in life does it develop an ego and a superego. It's primitive and instinctive. The id is impulsive and part of our psyche which responds directly and immediately to instincts. The id demands immediate satisfaction, and when this happens, we experience pleasure. When it's denied, we experience unpleasure or tension. The id engages in a primary process thinking, which is primitive, illogical, irrational, and fantasy-orientated. This form of process thinking has no comprehension of objective reality and is selfish and wishful in nature. When you think of the ego, think of a way to mediate between the unrealistic id and the external real world. It is ultimately the decision-making component of the personality and works by reason, whereas the id is chaotic and totally unreasonable. Like the id, the ego seeks pleasure and avoids pain, but unlike the id, the ego is concerned with devising a realistic strategy to obtain pleasure. If the ego fails in its attempt to use the reality principle and anxiety is experienced, unconscious defense mechanisms are employed to help ward off unpleasant feelings or to make good feelings better for the individual. The ego engages in secondary process thinking, which is rational, realistic, and orientated towards problem solving. If a plan of action does not work, then it is thought through again until the problem is found. This is known as reality testing and enables a person to control their impulses and demonstrate self-control via mastery of the ego. The superego consists of two systems, the conscious and the ideal self. The conscious can punish the ego through causing feelings of guilt. For example, if the ego gives into the id's demands and impulses, the superego may make the person feel bad through guilt. The ideal self is a picture of how you ought to be and represents career aspirations, how to treat other people, and how to behave as a member of society. When you think of the superego, think of it as the version of you that would be a perfectionist. If somebody has high standards of themselves and they have a lot of superego, then whatever the person does will represent failure and they'll feel as if they are never good enough. The ideal self and conscious are largely determined in childhood from parental values and how they were brought up. Okay, so basically the id is about meeting basic needs. The id is the most basic part of the personality and wants instant gratification for wants and needs. If these needs or wants are not met, a person becomes tense or anxious. With the ego, it's about dealing with reality. The ego deals with reality and tries to meet the desires of the id in a way that is socially acceptable in the world. This may mean delaying gratification and helping to get rid of the tension the id feels if a desire is not met the right way. The ego recognizes that other people have needs and wants too, and that being selfish is not always good for us in the long run. The superego is about adding morals. The superego develops last and is based on morals and judgments about right and wrong. Even though the superego may reach the same decision about something, the superego's reason for that decision is more based on moral values, while the ego's decision is based more on what others think or what the other consequences of actions could be.